My wife told me I'd never be enough for her standards, so I became everything she wanted. Just not for her. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and looking back now, I realize my entire marriage began with a sentence that should have been a warning, not a compliment. But at the time, I was stupidly proud when Amanda smiled at me and said, "You're the kind of man women settle down with." I didn't hear the subtext. I only heard appreciation, not resignation, not settling, not choosing safety over passion. She always described me as stable, hardworking, dependable. Words that sound flattering until you realize they're being used instead of things like loved, wanted, valued. But I didn't know any better. I grew up in an average family where stability was a badge of honor. When someone praised your reliability, you took it as the highest compliment. Amanda was nothing like me. She came from this high-achieving, borderline snobbish family where everyone spoke like their last names were brands. Her mother once looked at my shoes and said, practical," the same way someone might describe a cheap blender. Her father would ask me about my job but never listen to the answer, always cutting in with something about real career trajectories. But Amanda defended me back then. She'd hold my hand and roll her eyes at them, whispering, "Ignore them, babe. They don't understand what matters." And I believed her. God, I believed her so easily. We were engaged within a year, married soon after, and I thought I'd somehow won the lottery by landing a woman who looked at me like I offered something no one else could. What I didn't realize, what I was painfully blind to, was that I wasn't her dream. I wasn't even her second choice. I was safe. The man you marry when you give up on the man you really wanted. I didn't know it yet, but I was Plan B, walking straight into a future, built on the illusion of being enough. And it wouldn't take long before the cracks started showing. I remember the exact moment it happened. We were sitting on the couch, eating takeout after a long day. The TV was on, muted, and Amanda was scrolling through her phone like always. I made some dumb joke about starting a podcast just to entertain the idea, and she didn't even look up when she said it. "You're not really the type people listen to. You're average, babe." Average. It was such a surgical word. She didn't say it with venom. She said it with certainty. Like she'd been holding on to that opinion for a while, just waiting for the right moment to drop it like a fact. I laughed awkwardly, trying to brush it off, but something in me curled up and sank. I felt small, like a kid being told not to dream too loud. After that, I started noticing the patterns. How she talked about other men, especially her boss. She once said, "God, the way David commands a room, that's what leadership looks like." Or how she admired her ex's ambition, even though he'd cheated on her twice. I used to tell myself she was just expressive, complimentary, but the truth was, I was being compared every single day, and I was always losing. I started dressing better, changed my cologne, even tried being more assertive. But it felt like I was performing for someone who had already decided the show wasn't worth watching. And when I'd ask if something was wrong, she'd tilt her head and say, "Why are you being so sensitive lately?" I wish I could say I confronted her then. I wish I had the guts. But I didn't. I started apologizing for things I hadn't even done wrong. Started working longer hours, thinking maybe if I made more money, I'd finally hit her bar. I didn't know yet that her bar wasn't meant for me to reach. It was designed to keep me chasing. At some point, I stopped asking what Amanda wanted, because every time I got close to figuring it out, she changed the answer. One month it was, "You need to be more ambitious," so I enrolled in a leadership seminar at work. The next, it was, "You're too intense lately. Can't you just relax?" If I took initiative, I was doing too much. If I held back, I was uninspiring. I started to feel like I was being tested constantly, with questions I wasn't allowed to get right. Her standards weren't about me at all. They were about control, about keeping me off balance, unsure of myself, chasing some ever-shifting goalpost just to earn a little of her approval. It wasn't even about love anymore. It was about performance. I wasn't a husband. I was a project she resented. One night, we were getting ready for a friend's wedding. I came out in a tailored navy suit, probably the best I'd looked in years, and Amanda glanced at me and said, "You're not going to wear that tie, are you? It looks cheap." I just stood there, frozen, while she picked out another one without waiting for a response. Like I was a mannequin she had to dress for appearances. Like my taste didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. And that night after the wedding, I overheard her telling a friend in the bathroom line that she married someone dependable, not desirable. I wasn't even supposed to hear it, but I did. I stood there in the hallway, staring at a framed photo of our wedding day, wondering how a smile that wide could hide so much contempt. I didn't say anything when we got home. I didn't even bring it up. I just sat on the edge of our bed, staring at my shoes, wondering when I became the person who accepted this kind of love. But that wasn't the last time she'd make me feel small. It was just the beginning. There's a special kind of humiliation that hits when someone tears you down in front of other people, especially when it's the person you love. It happened at a dinner party with Amanda's coworkers. She had begged me to come, said it was important to show face, even though I'd just finished a 12-hour shift. I ironed my shirt twice, practiced my smile in the mirror. I wanted to make her proud. The moment we arrived, I could feel the shift. Everyone was in suits way more expensive than mine, talking about hedge funds and international property. I felt like I had stumbled into a club I was never invited to. Still, I did my best, asked polite questions, laughed when I was supposed to, until Amanda introduced me. "This is my husband," she said. "He works in logistics," or something like that. She shrugged, like I was an accessory, like she forgot the exact title of the man who pays half her mortgage. A few people chuckled, and someone joked, "So, you're the guy who makes sure Amazon delivers on time?" I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. Amanda didn't defend me. She just sipped her wine and moved on to another conversation like I was furniture. In the car ride home, I didn't speak. I kept replaying that moment in my head, how she didn't even try to show respect. And when I finally asked her about it, she rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. It was just a joke." No apology, no understanding, just dismissal. I slept in the guest room that night, not because we were fighting, but because I didn't want to share a bed with someone who made me feel invisible. It wasn't even about love anymore. It was about dignity, and somehow I was losing that too. But the worst part? I still wanted to make her proud. It happened during one of those stupid couples therapy sessions she insisted on, more for optics than actual healing. I remember sitting across from her on that beige couch while the therapist asked a simple question. "What do you need from each other that you're not getting?" Amanda didn't even blink. She said, "I need a man who's driven, someone who inspires me, someone who walks into a room and turns heads." And then she added, "You're a good man, but you're not that." That sentence landed in my chest like a sledgehammer, like she was saying, "You're not enough, and you never will be." I don't know how I stayed composed. The therapist said something about unpacking expectations and timelines, but all I could hear was that one line on repeat. "You're not that." That night, I drove around for an hour before going home. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat in a Walmart parking lot thinking, if I died tomorrow, the woman I married would probably just sigh in relief. But somewhere in that silence, something cracked. Not in a tragic way, more like a shift. I realized I'd been measuring my worth with her ruler, and it was warped. So I started writing down everything she said I wasn't. Driven, confident, ambitious, respected, attractive. I listed them on my phone like battle objectives. Not because I thought I could win her back, but because I was sick of feeling like a shadow of a man in my own life. That night, I signed up for a personal trainer consultation. I dusted off a book I'd abandoned 6 months ago. I even reached out to a former mentor to ask about leadership development programs. Quietly, methodically, I started building. Not for her, but because I couldn't live one more day as the man Amanda believed I was, and in time, I'd become everything she wanted. Just not for her. At first, I didn't tell anyone, not Amanda, not my coworkers, not even my friends. I treated it like a covert operation, like I was rebuilding myself under cover of darkness. I started waking up at 5 a.m. before work to hit the gym. My body ached in ways it hadn't since college, but I liked the pain. It reminded me I was doing something. I cleaned out my closet and got rid of the oversized polos and beat-up sneakers. I watched YouTube videos on style, posture, presence. I downloaded audiobooks on leadership and confidence and played them during my commutes instead of sad music. And Amanda, she didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't say a word. Maybe it was because she thought my efforts were too little, too late. Maybe she believed I was just having a phase. But part of me suspects she didn't want to see me change. Because if I actually became the man she claimed to crave, then what excuse would she have for treating me like a placeholder? At work, I pitched a logistics optimization system that got the attention of 2 senior managers. I started sitting in meetings I used to be excluded from. I even caught the attention of a company exec who told me after a presentation, "You've got leadership potential. Ever considered stepping into something bigger?" That compliment? It rattled me, not because I didn't believe it, but because it was the first time in years that someone looked at me and saw more than a utility. But I didn't bring it up at home. Not to Amanda. I still wasn't ready to let her back into that part of me. Because now, this wasn't about saving the marriage, it was about saving myself. And soon, I'd realize, the stronger I got, the weaker our marriage became. It started with a laugh, not mine, hers. A high, breathy giggle that came from the kitchen while she stood over her phone, wine glass in hand. I was walking in from the garage, covered in post-gym sweat, and I paused. She didn't notice I was there, or maybe she didn't care. She whispered, "Stop, you're terrible," followed by a quick smile into the screen. And that's when I felt it, that tight, low sensation in the pit of my stomach. Something between dread and confirmation. When she saw me, she quickly flipped her phone over. "Just talking to Maya," she said. But Maya's name didn't have a heart emoji next to it. I didn't confront her right away. I needed proof, not just of the messages, but of my sanity. Because by this point, I didn't trust my own instincts. I told myself I was overthinking, that she was just stressed, that I was projecting my own insecurities. But a week later, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed. Gavin. Still thinking about that dream I had last night. I stared at the screen like it had slapped me. My hands were shaking. I didn't even open the message. I didn't have to. The heart emoji was enough. The suggestive tone, the familiarity, all of it screamed, "This is not just a friend." When I finally asked her, she didn't deny it. She just sighed and said, "It's not physical, it's just emotional support." Emotional support, like I wasn't supposed to be that person. like I had forfeited the right to be her confidant, her soft place, her damn husband. She looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "You're always so intense lately," she said. "I just needed someone who listens without making it about themselves." And that was the moment I realized. She didn't just want someone better, she wanted someone else. I wish I could say Gavin was the first time she crossed a line, but once that door cracked open, I couldn't help walking through it. Something inside me demanded answers. Closure, maybe, or just confirmation that I wasn't crazy for feeling like our entire marriage had been one long, well-lit performance. So I started looking. Not hacking into her phone or anything wild, just noticing. Old credit card statements she never deleted. Photos and cloud backups I hadn't paid attention to before. Deleted messages that still showed up in notification previews on our shared iPad. Patterns began forming. Familiar names, overlapping dates. There was Kyle from her marketing team, who accidentally called her at midnight twice in 1 week last year. There was Trevor, her yoga instructor, who once sent her a Venmo payment labeled "Just Desserts" the same day I was out of town. And then there was Ethan. Her ex. The one she swore she blocked. The one she claimed was toxic and manipulative and completely out of her life. But guess what? There he was in her hidden album. Screenshots of messages from last fall. Her saying she missed how he used to make her feel alive. Him replying, "I still know how." I sat in the living room that night, phone in one hand, wedding photo in the other. I don't know how long I stared at it. Maybe an hour. Amanda was asleep upstairs. Or maybe just pretending to be. I could have stormed into the bedroom and thrown everything on the floor. I could have screamed. But instead, I just sat there. Calm, numb, detached. Because at that point, it didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like confirmation of something I'd already known deep down. And that's when the anger left me. And something colder, sharper, more focused took its place. I wasn't going to break. I was going to build. I'm not proud of what I did next. The night after, I confirmed everything. The lies, the affairs, the long trail of men she used as emotional stand-ins. I broke. Not in a loud, dramatic way. In a quiet, pathetic way that still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed where she was reading, and said, "Do you still love me?" She looked up, annoyed. "What kind of question is that?" "I need to hear it," I whispered. "Just, please, tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me this meant something." She stared at me for a long time. Then she exhaled through her nose like she was tired. "You're a good man," she said slowly. "You're reliable. You're safe. But I don't know if that's love not the way I want it." That word again, safe. It was the same damn word that once made me feel chosen. Now it felt like a death sentence. I nodded slowly, lips pressed tight, like I was agreeing to a contract I hadn't signed. I reached for her hand. She let me hold it, but didn't squeeze back. And then I begged. I begged her to go to therapy with me. I begged her to start over. I said I'd change, I'd listen more, I'd be whatever she needed. I promised her things no one should have to promise just to be loved. I didn't even recognize the voice coming out of my mouth. It was the voice of a man who had lost himself trying to win someone who never saw his value in the first place. She didn't cry. She didn't say yes. She just looked at me like I was offering her leftovers after she'd already eaten. And in that moment, something in me collapsed. Because I finally saw it. She didn't fall out of love with me. She was never in it to begin with. I moved out the next morning. No fight, no shouting match, no emotional last kiss, just quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for permission, only space. I packed a duffel bag, grabbed my laptop, and left a note on the counter that said, "I need air. Don't call me." But I didn't disappear. I evolved. Every ounce of pain she'd carved into me, I repurposed. I used it like steel. I went back to the gym with a fire I hadn't felt since I was 19. I started waking up at 4:30 a.m. instead of 5. I turned down invites to hang out and poured myself into work, side hustles, learning, coaching. By week 3, I had filed for separation. By month 2, I launched a logistics consulting firm out of a tiny co-working space downtown. Amanda didn't notice. Or she pretended not to. Maybe she thought I was wallowing somewhere, missing her, pining like a lost puppy. She had no idea I was building something she'd never be allowed to enter. I updated my wardrobe, got my teeth whitened, cut out fast food, upgraded my posture. It wasn't about vanity. It was about reclaiming ownership over a body and life I had surrendered to her critique for too long. At work, I pitched a partnership to a major supplier that landed me my first 5-figure client. When my former manager heard about it, he offered me a chance to return, with a significant promotion. I politely declined. I was no longer built for the cage. I didn't tell Amanda. I didn't rub it in her face. I didn't need to. I was becoming everything she said I couldn't be, everything she claimed she wanted, but this time, on my terms. And the higher I climbed, the smaller her memory started to feel. But she wasn't done with me yet, not even close. She texted me after 3 months of silence. "Amanda, can we talk, just for a minute? I think we rushed everything." I stared at that message for a long time. Not because I wanted to reply, because it made me realize how long it had been since I needed anything from her. I wasn't the same man she left behind, begging on the edge of a shared bed. I was sharper now, calmer. Scarred, maybe, but solid. I agreed to meet. Not to rekindle anything, just to close the door properly. We sat at a cafe. She showed up in a beige trench coat and designer heels, like she was playing the role of elegant regret. She said things like, "I didn't know how good I had it," and "I think we both just needed to grow." And I nodded. I let her talk. I let her believe she was the one making peace. Then I slid a plain white envelope across the table. Inside, the finalized divorce agreement, drafted and ready. Fair split, no drama, no vengeance, just clean exit. She blinked at it, confused. "You already—" "Yeah," I said. "I figured this chapter's been over for a while. This just makes it official." She looked at me for a long time, searching for that old version of me, the one who needed her validation, the one who would do anything for a breadcrumb of affection. But he wasn't there anymore. She signed, quietly, no protests, no tears, just a pen gliding across paper, sealing her place in a story she no longer had control over. When we stood up to leave, she touched my arm gently and said, "You look different." "I am," I said. And I walked away without looking back. Because by then, I'd learned the most powerful revenge isn't cruelty, it's indifference. Freedom felt strange at first. Not the kind of wild, celebratory freedom you see in movies, but a quiet, clean kind. Like taking a deep breath in a room that used to smell like smoke. I moved into a 1-bedroom loft with exposed brick and too much natural light. I furnished it with intention. Nothing flashy, just simple, solid things that made me feel grounded. No shared closets, no cold shoulders, just me. And for the first time in years, that was enough. I went on solo hikes, ate dinner at the bar instead of the corner booth meant for 2. Read books I'd abandoned during the marriage. I didn't rush to date. I wasn't trying to win the breakup. I was learning how to be alone without feeling lonely. But the world noticed the difference. At work, people started deferring to me like a leader, not just a contributor. I got invited to panels, podcasts, mentorship opportunities. My consulting firm took off faster than I expected, partly because I was finally betting on myself. I began reconnecting with friends I'd let drift. Some apologized for pulling away during my marriage. They didn't know how to tell me she made them uncomfortable. That stung more than I admitted. I met new people too. Not flings, just genuine connections. Women who looked me in the eye, laughed with their whole face, asked questions like they actually cared about the answers. I wasn't hunting for a replacement. I was rebuilding my standard. And every time I caught my reflection, at the gym, walking past store windows in Zoom meetings, I paused. Because I saw him, the man I used to imagine I could be. Not flashy, not famous, but solid, rooted, whole. The man Amanda once said I wasn't. And I couldn't help but wonder, what would she think now? It was a Thursday night, late spring, one of those evenings where the city air feels just warm enough to invite people to linger. I was speaking at a business networking gala downtown. Nothing huge, just a 200-person event hosted by a professional development group I'd started consulting for. My name was printed on the banners. There was a slideshow of my case studies. People were asking me questions, nodding when I spoke, shaking my hand with that firm kind of grip that says, "You're someone." And then I saw her. Back of the room. Hair straighter than I remembered. Lips painted red. Wearing that same beige trench coat like she was stepping back into a life she forgot she left. Amanda. For a moment I felt nothing. No anxiety, no stomach twist, no flicker of hope. Just quiet recognition. Like seeing an old classmate from a lifetime ago. After I wrapped up my talk and stepped off the stage, she approached. Confident, but softer than I remembered. She smiled, tilted her head. "You've changed," she said. I nodded. "Yeah, a lot can happen in a year." She asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime, said she'd been thinking a lot about everything, and that she'd been following my work. I thanked her. Really, I meant it. Her absence had given me more than her presence ever did. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small black card. "My assistant handles my schedule now," I said, handing it to her. "You can reach out to her if you need something business-related." The smile fell from her face. Just slightly, just enough. And that was the moment I knew. She thought she could still reach me, but I wasn't standing on her level anymore. And I wasn't looking down either. I was just gone. After that night, Amanda tried reaching out a few more times. An email saying she just wanted clarity. A text saying she missed the way I used to listen. Even a message on my business Instagram, which she once mocked as a hobby that'll burn out in 6 months. I didn't answer any of them. Not out of spite, not even anger. I just didn't need to. That part of my life felt like an old skin I had already shed. Her voice, once so central in my head, had become background noise. Faint, distant, barely noticeable. One evening, I sat down and wrote a letter I never intended to send. I poured it all out. Every hurt, every moment she made me feel small, every time I begged her to see me. I told her how her rejection gave birth to the strongest version of myself I'd ever known. I even thanked her. Not sarcastically. Honestly. Because if she hadn't broken me, I never would have learned how to rebuild without permission. I folded the letter and slipped it inside an old leather-bound notebook I kept from college, tucked between pages full of forgotten goals and dreams. It felt poetic in a way, like putting a ghost to bed. A week later, I saw her again, this time by accident. Grocery store, no makeup, sweatpants. She looked tired, like life had started asking her questions she no longer had the answers for. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but I just smiled politely and walked past. Because some goodbyes aren't spoken, they're lived. She'll never get the final conversation. She'll never get the clarity she craves. Because closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you claim for yourself. And I had already claimed mine. Her name was Jasmine. I met her at a leadership retreat I was invited to speak at, an event that a year ago I wouldn't have even believed I belonged in. She wasn't flashy. She didn't command the room with noise. She did it with calm, with depth, with a kind of quiet confidence I didn't know I was starving for. She asked questions no one had ever asked me. Real ones, like, what part of your life did you outgrow the hardest? Or, what's something you miss that you'd never take back? On our second conversation, I caught myself waiting for her to interrupt, but she didn't. She actually listened. Not to respond, not to correct, not to critique, just to know me. And that alone felt revolutionary. I told her about Amanda. Not everything, but enough. She didn't flinch. She just said, "Some people try to own your light when they're scared of losing theirs." I swear, something cracked open in me when she said that. Jasmine didn't fall for the man I was becoming because of my revenge arc or my success story. She saw through it. She liked the man under all that. The one who stayed kind even when it hurt. The one who still held the door open even after it had been slammed in his face 100 times. One night, we were watching the city lights from my balcony when she looked at me and said, "You carry peace like a man who fought hard for it." And that moment, those 12 words, felt more healing than the entire apology Amanda never gave me. I wasn't rushing into anything, but I was starting to understand what real love looked like. It didn't humiliate. It didn't diminish. It didn't come with conditions. It simply saw you and stayed. Today, my life is unrecognizable, but in the best way. I run my own company with a growing team that respects me. I speak at events, not because I crave attention, but because I finally have something worth sharing. I wake up early, not to escape anything, but because I love the silence of mornings now. I lift, I read, I journal, I breathe, deeply, fully, without permission. My loft has become my sanctuary, not just because it's mine, but because everything in it was chosen by a man who finally knows what he wants. The books on the shelf, the art on the wall, even the stupid chipped coffee mug I can't seem to throw away. It all means something. I'm not trying to impress anyone anymore, not even Jasmine. She likes me better that way. Sometimes I think about Amanda, not with anger, not even with regret. Just awareness. Like seeing a street you used to live on but no longer call home. She told me once I wasn't enough for her standards, and for a long time I believed her. But what she didn't realize was that her criticism wasn't a prophecy, it was fuel. Every time she dismissed me, doubted me, belittled me, she was handing me bricks, and I used them to build a life so strong, so honest, so me, that it doesn't even fit her narrative anymore. I became the man she claimed she wanted, driven, respected, magnetic, but I didn't do it to win her back. I did it because I finally saw myself the way no one else ever had. And now she watches from the outside, scrolling past my wins, wondering what if, composing messages she'll never send. Meanwhile, I pour coffee in my chipped mug, kiss a woman who speaks to my soul, and smile at the life I built from ashes. Not for revenge, not for applause, just for me. Because I was never not enough. She just wasn't ready for a man like me.